Human gives alien girl a leg massage. You won't believe what happened next. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's return to our main character, Evan Rourke. The plasma storm hit Vesper, 6 like a cosmic hammer, rattling every steel beam until the whole mining station groaned like a bending aircraft wing. Alarms wailed through the corridors, a shrill mechanical scream that stabbed straight into Evan's ears as he sprinted down the trembling maintenance deck. Sparks burst from the overhead conduits in glowing showers, sizzling on the metal grates under his boots. His breath came sharp and cold, tasting like burnt copper as the pressure system struggled to compensate for a partial hull breach somewhere above him. A streak of violet light flashed past the observation window, raw plasma arcing so close it looked like a living thing clawing at the station's skin. Evan didn't have time to process it. His handheld scanner chirped wildly, pointing him toward a structural collapse on Deck C. Typical, he muttered, tightening his grip on the emergency kit. The storm picks the one day I'm doing a double shift. But as he rounded the next corner, skidding slightly on the vibrating floor, he froze. The glass hallway ahead, normally a transparent tunnel facing the storm, had ruptured along its far end. Shards glittered in the spinning red emergency lights. And through the swirling snow of debris, a tall figure tumbled helplessly, hitting the grated floor 2 levels below with a sickening metallic thud. Evan's stomach lurched. That wasn't human. That silhouette, those elongated limbs, that faint bioluminescent shimmer. He'd worked around enough alien contractors to recognize the difference instantly. Before he even thought about safety protocols or the fact that he was supposed to call security first, his legs moved. He bolted toward the emergency ladder. The whole frame shook under the storm's pressure, but he didn't stop. He slid down the last few rungs, hitting the lower deck hard enough to jolt his knees. "Hey, can you hear me?" he called, stepping through drifting dust. The figure lay half-curled on the floor, armor cracked along one thigh, breath shallow and hitching. As Evan crouched beside her, the glow along her calf flickered erratically like a short-circuited neon tube. That wasn't just injury. That was a neurological overload. He recognized the pattern from a training seminar about xenobiology hazards. "Okay, easy. I've got you," he said. Though she was far taller, her skin a deep silver blue with faint turquoise veins pulsing under the surface. Her muscles twitched uncontrollably along her legs, each spasm sharp enough to slam her heel against the deck. The scanner in Evan's hand beeped frantically. Neural spike. Critical. Her kind needed specialized medical gear he definitely didn't have on him. But there was one emergency workaround mentioned in the manual. If he could manually compress the overloaded nerve clusters along her legs, he might buy her time. "I'm sorry if this is weird," he whispered, sliding his hands carefully under her calf. "But you're frying your own nervous system. I have to help." The second his palms pressed against her skin, heat surged through his fingertips. Not temperature, energy, like static building under his skin. The alien girl sucked in a sharp breath, her eyes snapping open. Bright, star-shaped pupils locked onto him with pure shock. Then something deeper. Recognition? Alarm? Evan wasn't sure. But her voice, when it came, was low, strained, and laced with disbelief. "Human, do you understand what you just did?" Her leg jerked again, but this time not from pain, more like a reflex tearing through her body. Evan shook his head, focused entirely on stabilizing the nerve clusters. "Just hang on. I'm trying to stop the overload before it shuts your whole system down." The lights flickered overhead. Another explosion rumbled somewhere in the station. And as her breathing stilled for a moment, she whispered a single sentence that made Evan pause, hands frozen on her trembling leg. "That touch, on an Astrai warrior, it means you have invoked a bond." Evan blinked. "Eh, what?" But before she could answer, the bulkhead behind them shuddered violently, the metal warping inward as footsteps, heavy, armored, and getting closer, echoed down the broken hallway. And Evan realized he wasn't the only one who'd found her. The real trouble was just arriving. The bulkhead behind Evan buckled again, metal groaning like something enormous was raking its claws along the outside. Evan tightened his grip around the alien girl's leg, trying to keep her muscles from seizing again. Kaelis drew a ragged breath, her luminous veins flickering like malfunctioning LEDs beneath her skin. "They are coming," she whispered. "I can hear their armor resonating with the storm." Evan did not hear anything except the rumbling thunder of plasma outside, but he trusted her instincts far more than the station's cracked sensors. He scanned the dim hallway. The flickering emergency lights cast long shadows that stretched and retracted as if alive. "Who is coming?" Evan asked, lowering his voice instinctively. Kaelis swallowed hard. Even in her weakened state, she radiated the presence of a soldier trained her entire life to face death without flinching. But now he saw something else in her eyes. "Fear. Not your security team," she said. "Astrai hunters. They tracked me when the storm forced me to detach from my squad." Evan's pulse hammered. Hunters. That word alone told him everything he needed to know. These were not rescuers. These were executioners. He tried to lift her, but her legs spasmed again. She bit down a cry, jaw clenched, shoulders shaking. Without stabilizing her nerves, she would be dead weight. "I need 30 more seconds," Evan muttered, sliding his hands along her calf again. She sucked in a sharp breath, her head snapping back. "Human, do not do that," she hissed, voice trembling in a way he could not decipher. "You are intensifying the signal. You do not understand what that contact means." "I do not care about cultural confusion right now," Evan said through clenched teeth. "I am trying to save your nervous system before you tear your own muscles apart." She stared at him, pupils contracting like camera apertures. Something unspoken flickered in her gaze. Confusion, warning, and something dangerously close to vulnerability. But the moment shattered when a heavy crash echoed down the hall. Evan looked up to see 3 dark silhouettes approaching. Their armor glowed with faint cyan runes, each step synchronized like a marching algorithm. The storm outside roared, rattling the station as if trying to warn him. Kaelis' hand darted up, grabbing his wrist with surprising strength. "Evan Rourke," she said, forcing each word through pain-clenched teeth. "If they see you touching me like this, they will execute you first." Evan blinked. "Why?" "Because your hands are completing the bond pattern," she said. "To them, it will look as if you are claiming a warrior of the Astrai." Great. Just great. A random maintenance shift, and now he was apparently committing interspecies marriage by accident. The approaching figures finally stepped into the fractured light. Their helmets had elongated visors resembling predatory birds. Their armor hummed, a soft, eerie tone that vibrated through the floor. One raised a spear-like weapon. A beam of blue energy buzzed at its tip, lighting the air with static. "Target located," the lead hunter declared. His voice was distorted, mechanical yet sharp. Astrai designation, Kaelis Shira. Status, compromised. Prepare for retrieval and termination. Evan instinctively moved between them and Kaelis. He did not even know why. Maybe adrenaline. Maybe stubbornness. Maybe the fact that she had trusted him, even if only for a moment. The hunter aimed the spear directly at his chest. "Step aside, human." Evan lifted both hands. Okay, he said. "Just listen. She is injured. She needs medical attention. Let me stabilize her before." A bolt of blue energy shot past his cheek, slicing a scorched line across the wall. Evan froze, swallowing hard. Kaelis pushed herself upright, gripping the torn metal floor for support. Her legs trembled violently. "Stand down," she growled at the hunters. "I can still fight." But her body betrayed her. She collapsed to her knees, breath rasping. Evan lunged forward, catching her before she hit the metal decking. The hunters raised their weapons again, their runes flaring brighter. "Unauthorized contact detected," the lead hunter said. "Human interference violates Astrai War Protocol subsection 9. Kaelis' fingers dug weakly into Evan's sleeve. "Run," she whispered. "Please run." Evan did not. Instead, he drew himself up, positioning her behind him, shielding her with his entire body. "You will have to go through me," he said, heart hammering but voice steady. The hunters paused. The runes along their armor dimmed slightly, as if they were recalibrating the unexpected defiance. "Human," the lead said slowly. "Do you understand the consequence of that stance?" Evan did not. Not fully. But he understood one thing. She had fallen, and he had said he was responsible now. And whether that meant cultural bonding, accidental vows, or imminent death did not matter. He squared his shoulders. I am not letting you kill her. A long silence followed, punctuated only by the distant thunder of the plasma storm. Then the lead hunter tilted his head. Very well, he said. Then you have chosen your fate. Sparks danced across the spear tips as all three hunters lowered into an attack stance. Kaelis's breath hitched behind him. Evan braced himself, knowing he had no weapon, no armor, and no plan. Only his body. Only his choice. And then the hunters charged. The hunters surged forward with the force of a collapsing bulkhead, their armored boots pounding against the trembling deck as the plasma storm roared outside. Evan barely had time to pull Kaelis tighter behind him before the first hunter swung a glowing spear, slicing a crackling arc through the air where Evan's head had been a heartbeat earlier. He ducked, heat brushing across his scalp like the blast of a furnace door. The second hunter lunged from the left, armor humming with a predatory resonance that vibrated through Evan's ribs. Evan reacted on instinct alone. Years of climbing maintenance rigs and dodging malfunctioning machinery had taught him one thing: move first, think later. He grabbed a fallen metal brace from the floor and swung it upward. The makeshift bar clanged against the hunter's wrist plate, deflecting the blow just enough to send the spear skidding against the deck in a shower of sparks. The third hunter closed in fast, moving with unnatural precision. Evan felt the air tighten around him, sensed the killing strike before it landed. But before the spear could reach him, Kaelis pushed herself upright on shaking legs. Her veins glowed brightly, pulsing with unstable energy. She lifted her forearm, the armor along it flickering like a failing circuit. A thin burst of shimmering light shot from her wrist, slamming into the floor between them and the hunters. The shockwave knocked all three enemies back a full yard. Kaelis gasped and collapsed again, barely catching herself on one hand. The light around her dimmed dangerously. Evan dropped beside her. You cannot do that, he said, voice cracking. Your nerves will burn out. She inhaled sharply, sweat, or something like it, glimmering on her skin. They will kill you, she whispered. And if they kill you, the bond becomes a severed mark. It is forbidden. Evan shook his head. I do not care about your bond. I care about keeping both of us alive. She stared at him for a breathless moment, her expression unreadable. Then the hunters rose again, their armor runes brightening in eerie unison. Astrai warrior Kaelis Shira, the lead hunter, declared, You have violated combat protocol by allowing a human to invoke a ceremonial bond. You are hereby marked for reclamation and purging. Over my dead body, Evan muttered. The lead hunter tilted his head. That is the intention. They advanced again. Evan scanned the hall. There, 30 feet ahead, an access tunnel, half collapsed but still open. It led to the auxiliary power grid. If he could reach it, he could trigger the emergency magnetic shutters and trap the hunters inside the maintenance wing. But he needed a distraction. He looked at Kaelis. She was clutching her leg, breathing fast, her bioluminescent veins crackling like tiny lightning patterns. Kaelis, he whispered, can you stand if I help you? She closed her eyes for a moment, then nodded once, trembling. Only if you stabilize the overload first. Human, your hands, yeah. Evan said, sliding his grip along her calf again. I know. The moment his hands made contact, her entire body shivered. A soft glow rippled across her thighs, up her torso, and into her throat, as if his touch sent a pulse through her entire nervous system. She let out a strained, involuntary sound, and bit her lip hard. You do not understand, she whispered, voice trembling. This is not just stabilizing. You are amplifying the bond signal. Then hold on, Evan said, lifting her with his free arm. The hunters lunged again. Evan swung the metal brace with every ounce of strength he had, smashing it against the nearest hunter's helmet. The blow echoed like a struck gong. The hunter reeled. Evan pulled Kaelis toward the access tunnel while the other two hunters recalibrated. Sparks burst from overhead wiring. The floor shook under their feet. Kaelis stumbled, but Evan kept her upright. His hand clamped around her leg just long enough to keep the nerve overload from turning her muscles to jelly. They reached the tunnel entrance. Evan slapped the control panel. Nothing. Dead. He slammed his fist into the manual override. The panel snapped off. Evan, Kaelis said weakly, they are coming. The hunters were almost on them. Evan ripped open the conduit box, his fingers diving into a tangle of wires. He yanked two free and slapped them together. A burst of white-hot sparks exploded outward. The auxiliary shutters screeched to life, dragging heavy steel walls down from the ceiling. The hunters charged. The first one got halfway through the doorway before the shutter slammed down on his armor, pinning him like a trapped insect. He roared, thrashing violently. The other two leapt back just in time as the shutters sealed with a thunderous metallic boom. Evan stumbled backward, his chest heaving. Kaelis sagged into him, her hand gripping his shoulder, her breath warm against his neck. "You saved me," she whispered. Again. Evan swallowed hard. "We are not safe yet." She lifted her head, her luminous eyes searching his face. "Human, Evan Rourke, why do you keep doing this?" He did not have an answer. Not one that made sense. Not one he understood himself. So he said the only thing that felt true. "Because you fell." Her expression softened, the meaning of those words hitting her again with the same force as before. She reached for his hand. "Then you should know," she whispered, "that in Astrai culture, that is a vow." Evan stared at her, stunned. And behind the sealed shutters, the hunters began cutting through the metal. The steel shutters shuddered under the relentless strikes of the hunters' energized blades, each impact sending a metallic scream through the narrow access tunnel. Evan braced his body against Kaelis to keep her upright as she fought to steady her breathing. Her bioluminescent veins pulsed with uneven light, flickering across her skin like unstable circuitry. Every tremor in her leg sent a jolt through his arm. "We need to move," Evan said, eyes darting toward the dim corridor ahead. The auxiliary tunnel stretched out like a throat of shadow and fractured lights, humming faintly as the power grid struggled to reroute energy around the storm damage. Kaelis shook her head weakly. "The overload, it is spreading. My muscles are locking. I will not be able to walk much farther." Evan tightened his grip around her waist. "Then I will help you." She gave him a weary, almost bitter smile. "You already have. More than you understand." The hunter's weapons sparked again, the shutters denting inward. A blue glow seeped through the cracks. They did not have long. Evan shifted her arm over his shoulders and began guiding her down the tunnel, their steps uneven but determined. The station groaned around them, metal straining as the plasma storm outside battered it like a giant fist. Loose conduits swung. From the ceiling, dripping sparks. Gusts of cold, recycled air hissed from ruptured vents. "Evan," Kaelis murmured, her voice growing faint. "You must hear me. The bond you triggered, it is not symbolic. It is biological." He glanced at her. "Meaning what?" "Meaning your touch can stabilize me," she whispered. "And meaning it can also intensify reactions that are not meant for combat." Evan almost stumbled. "Reactions like what?" She swallowed hard, her eyes averting. "A strain of proximity instinct. An attraction reflex triggered through leg contact. In Astrai culture, lower limb contact is considered intimate. Very intimate." Evan blinked. "So you are telling me that a leg massage is not a massage to my species," she said quickly. "It is a declaration." "Great," Evan muttered. "Perfect. Wonderful. I really needed interspecies romance rituals today." She gave a soft huff of breath that might have been a laugh if not for the pain tightening her features. "This is not romance. This is biology." Before he could answer, the tunnel lights flickered twice, then steadied into a dim crimson. The emergency grid had shifted. And that meant one thing. Security lockdown. "We need to reach the relay chamber," Evan said, pulling her a little faster. "I can override the lockdown from there." "Then we can." A thunderous crash cut him off. The shutters behind them buckled inward, sparks exploding across the walls. The hunters were almost through. Kaelis' grip on his arm tightened sharply. "Do not let them take me," she whispered. "If they reclaim me, the bond becomes punishment. They will sentence you for interference." "Yeah, I figured they were not planning to throw a welcome party," Evan said. They rounded a bend, and Evan spotted the relay chamber door hanging half open, sparks snapping from its hinges. Beyond it lay thick coils of power cabling and multiple control racks, exactly what he needed. He helped Kaelis inside and lowered her onto a metal support beam. "Stay here. I will bypass the node and get us a path deeper into the station." Kaelis caught his wrist before he could stand. Her fingers shook violently. "Evan, you must stabilize the overload first. If you leave me like this, my nerves will collapse." I will not survive the next surge. His stomach tensed. Then tell me what to do. Her eyes locked onto his. The nerve cluster you touched before, you must compress it. Again, slowly, with both hands. He knelt beside her, sliding his hands along her calf. The moment he touched her skin, a warm pulse throbbed beneath his palms like a current flowing directly into him. Kaelis inhaled sharply, her eyes half-lidding. Evan, careful, that's signal. I know, he said. Just stay with me. He pressed gently along the glowing vein lines, feeling the tension in her muscles slowly ease. Her breathing steadied, though her body trembled with every motion. For a brief moment, the storm outside, the hunters carving through steel, the danger around them, all of it faded into the background. There was only the warmth beneath his hands, the glow of her veins, and the way she whispered his name like it meant something ancient. But then the chamber door exploded inward. The hunters stepped through, their armor sparking and torn, their weapons humming with lethal intent. Kaelis grabbed his sleeve, panic flaring in her eyes. Evan. He rose, placing himself between her and the hunters once again. Human, the lead hunter said, leveling his spear. Step aside. You interfere with the Astrai law. Evan clenched his fists, heart pounding. Too bad, he said. I am not done saving her yet. The hunters spread out, preparing to strike. And the storm outside roared harder, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. The three hunters advanced with the cold precision of machines, their energized spears casting shifting blue glows across the relay chamber's walls. Evan felt the floor vibrate under their synchronized steps, each thud echoing through the metal frame of the collapsing station. Kaelis tried to push herself upright, but her legs buckled instantly. She fell forward, and Evan caught her, his arms tightening around her waist. Her breath hitched, soft and sharp against his chest, her bioluminescent veins flickering erratically. You need to breathe slowly, Evan whispered, steadying her. If the overload spikes again, it will cripple me, she finished, voice tight. Yes, I know. The lead hunter stepped closer. You cannot outrun us. Release the warrior. Stand down, and you will be spared. Evan did not move. Yeah, I am not buying that. One of the hunters shifted, raising his spear. A high-pitched hum filled the chamber. Evan felt the air pressure change, as if every molecule was being pulled toward the weapon's glowing edge. Kaelis' hand clamped onto his sleeve. Evan, do not provoke them. I am not provoking them, he said. I am irritating them. It is different. Despite the fear tightening her features, something like amusement flickered through her eyes. But the moment passed as the hunters lowered into an attack stance. Evan glanced sideways at the open relay panel on the wall. Exposed wires, glowing nodes, a half-melted interface. If he could reroute power to the auxiliary turbines, he could trigger a localized magnetic pulse strong enough to disrupt their armor systems. Maybe even drop them for a few seconds. But he needed access. Kaelis, Evan whispered. I need you to help me distract them. Just for a moment. Her expression hardened. I can barely stand. You do not need to stand. You just need to glow. She blinked, confused, until realization dawned. Her species' bioluminescence. The hunters had been tracking her based on it. If she amplified her glow suddenly, it might blind their visors for 1 or 2 seconds. Maybe less. Just enough. She exhaled shakily. I can try, but I will need your touch to trigger the flare. Then tell me where. She hesitated. The nerve nexus behind the knee. It will hurt. For you or for me? Yes. Evan nodded. Okay. On 3. The hunters advanced another step. Evan crouched beside her, sliding one arm around her waist to hold her upright, and pressing his hand to the glowing nerve cluster behind her knee. Her entire body tensed instantly, a sharp tremor rolling through her muscles like a shockwave. Evan, she gasped, her fingers gripping his wrist. 2. His hand pressed deeper. Her glow surged, veins blazing brighter. The hunters noticed. Bioluminescent spike detected, the lead hunter said flatly. Prepare termination strike. 3. Evan said. Kaelis' glow erupted. A blinding flash of turquoise and silver flooded the chamber, reflecting off metal walls like shattered stars. The hunters staggered, visors glitching. Now, Kaelis croaked. Evan lunged for the relay panel, sparks slicing across his knuckles as he grabbed 2 glowing cables and jammed them together. The chamber detonated with a magnetic boom. A wave of invisible force slammed outward, shuddering through the room. The hunters crashed to the floor, their armor flickering with disrupted circuits. Evan spun back to Kaelis, scooping her into his arms before her legs gave out completely. She was trembling violently, the flare having drained almost everything she had left. Did it work? She whispered. Yes, Evan said, but we have seconds before they reboot. He carried her toward the maintenance hatch at the back of the chamber. The hatch led to the ventilation truss, a narrow crawlspace network running behind the station's power conduits. A place the hunter's large armor could not easily enter. As he lifted her into the hatch opening, she touched his face, her fingers warm and unsteady. Evan Rourke, she whispered, you risk your life for me again and again. This is not normal behavior for your species. Evan gave a breathless laugh. I do not think I am having a normal day. She tried to smile, but her body trembled too hard. He braced her as she crawled forward, then climbed in behind her just as the hunter's armor rebooted. Their voices rose in unison, cold and angry. Human, return the warrior. You have violated Astrai law. Evan slammed the hatch shut. The hunter's spears struck the metal a second later, sending vibrations through the crawlspace. Kaelis slumped forward, breath shaking. Evan crawled closer, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. She flinched, another involuntary reaction, but did not pull away. Outside, the hunters kept striking. But here, in the dim blue glow of the truss, for one fragile moment, everything went still. Kaelis whispered, Evan, why are you doing this? He hesitated. Then he said the words that had changed everything between them. Because you fell. And in the dim glow, she looked at him as if she finally understood something she had spent her whole life ignoring. The crawlspace vibrated under every strike from the hunters, each impact ringing through the narrow metal chamber like a drumbeat of approaching death. Evan kept one hand braced against the denting hatch, while the other hovered near Kaelis' shoulder, ready to steady her if the tunnel lurched again. The storm outside groaned through the superstructure, wind and plasma battering the mining station with enough force to make the entire ventilation truss sway. Kaelis clung to the thin support bar beneath her, her breath rasping, her luminous veins dimming with each passing second. Your hunters really do not give up, do they? Evan whispered. They are not my hunters, she said, voice trembling with exhaustion. They serve the council. They do not serve me. Evan studied her face in the dim blue glow of the conduit lights. There was strain there, but something else too, shame. Old and tightly guarded. What did you mean back there, he asked quietly, about them reclaiming you? What does that even mean? Kaelis closed her eyes, her fingers tightening on the metal bar. To them, I am defective. Evan blinked. You? Defective? You fought 3 heavily armored warriors while half paralyzed. And that is the problem, she whispered. A warrior who loses control of her own nerves is unfit for duty. Unfit for the line. Evan felt heat rise in his chest. Anger. Not at her. Never at her. But at whatever culture could look at someone like Kaelis and see anything but strength. So they want to kill you because your legs gave out during a storm? She shook her head slowly. No. They want to kill me because I let you touch me. Evan stared at her, stunned silent. Kaelis opened her eyes, the glow in them soft but haunting. The bond you triggered, it is not just symbolic. It is not emotional. It is biological. It is meant to be invoked only between 2 Astrai who choose each other. I did not choose anything, Evan said, trying to keep his voice steady. I was trying to keep you alive. I know, she whispered. And that is why the hunters will not tolerate it. Intent does not matter. Only action. Another strike hit the hatch behind them, louder than the last. The metal bowed inward. Evan glanced over his shoulder. We need to move. This tunnel must lead somewhere. It leads to the environmental control spine, she said weakly. But it is narrow. Only small maintenance drones can normally pass. Evan smirked under his breath. Well, lucky for us. I am about as flexible as a desperate man can get. She shot him a look that might have been annoyance if she were not trembling so hard. Evan, you are risking your life for— Do not say it, he cut in. Do not say I am risking it for someone who thinks she is defective. She blinked, startled. He shifted closer, one hand brushing her calf to keep the overload from surging again. She inhaled sharply at the contact, her bioluminescence flaring faintly. I am risking it, he said softly, For someone who deserves better than being hunted by her own people. For a long moment, the only sound was the distant roar of the storm and the hunter's muffled shouts, echoing through the crawlspace walls. Then Kaelis whispered, "Human, your kindness is confusing." Evan let out a breathy laugh. "It is confusing for me too, trust me." The hatch behind them buckled again, a massive dent forming. Evan knew they had seconds. He grabbed the nearest cable bundle and pulled hard, exposing the maintenance hatch of the environmental spine. "We go now," he said. "No arguments." Kaelis hesitated. "I cannot crawl fast. My legs, then I will help you." He hooked her arm over his shoulder, guiding her into the tight passage. The moment her leg brushed his hip, she tensed, but she did not pull away. The crawl space narrowed to barely 2 feet high. They had to move on their elbows and knees, inch by inch. The storm's vibrations traveled through the beams like a heartbeat. Kaelis crawled ahead of him, her movements shaky but determined. The glow in her veins illuminated the tight walls like soft, rippling starlight. "Evan," she whispered after several feet, her voice fragile, "you must know something. The bond you invoked, it does not fade. It deepens with proximity. The closer you are, the stronger the instinct becomes." Evan paused. "Instinct?" She nodded weakly. "To protect, to trust, to connect." He absorbed that in silence. Kaelis continued crawling, each movement tight with pain. "It is dangerous," she murmured. "For you, for me. It could change everything." Evan reached forward, steadying her leg gently. "Then let it change everything," he said. She froze, breath catching. And in the darkness of the narrow spine, the glow of her veins brightened, warm, soft, undeniably alive. But before either of them could speak, a metallic screech ripped through the tunnel. The hunters had found another way in. The metallic screech tore through the narrow spine like a blade dragged across bone, vibrating through the walls, through the floor, through Evan's chest. Kaelis froze, her glowing veins dimming in fear as she twisted back toward him. "They found a vent," she whispered, breath trembling. "They are cutting through the support lattice." Evan shifted closer, placing a steadying hand on her back. The heat radiating through her skin pulsed in uneven waves, telling him the nerve overload was rising again. "Keep moving," he murmured. "We are almost through this section." The ventilation spine narrowed even further, forcing them onto their elbows. The sound of metal being ripped open echoed behind them. Closer. Faster. The hunters were not guessing anymore. They were tracking her bioluminescence again. Kaelis' movements faltered. She sagged, her legs trembling uncontrollably. "Evan, my nerves. I cannot." He slid forward, bracing her shoulders with both hands. "Yes, you can. You just need a minute. Tell me what I can do." She swallowed hard, struggling for breath. The flare backlash caused a secondary overload. "I need pressure on the posterior cluster." Evan blinked. "The what?" "Behind my thigh," she whispered, almost too quietly. "If you compress the nerve lines, the overload will stabilize." "But," she hesitated, eyes softening with something he had not seen before. Fear of him misunderstanding. Fear of herself reacting. Fear of what the bond demanded. "It will deepen the connection," she finished. Significantly, behind them, metal screamed again as the hunters forced open the vent mouth. Evan's heart pounded so hard he could feel it in his throat. There was no time for debate. "Kaelis," he whispered, "I trust you." And he pressed his palm to the back of her thigh. Her reaction was immediate. A sharp, shuddering inhale. Her entire body tensed, then arched slightly, her bioluminescent veins blazing bright turquoise as if ignited from within. The glow rippled through the cramped tunnel, lighting their faces with surreal, shifting light. "Evan," she gasped, her voice breaking. "You are triggering the Astrai proximity instinct." "Then just breathe," he whispered, keeping steady pressure exactly where she guided him. "This is survival." She braced her forehead against the metal floor, her fingers clawing at the steel as the tremors in her legs slowed, then softened, then gradually fell into rhythm with the pulse of his touch. The overload quieted. The glow in her veins settled into a stable hum. She exhaled shakily, her voice fragile. "It worked." Evan nodded. "Then we move." But before they could crawl another foot, a metal grate ahead burst inward. A hunter dropped into the narrow space, forced to crouch, but still massive enough to block the path forward. Its visor glowed cold blue as it leveled its spear. Human, surrender the warrior. Evan pushed Kaelis behind him instinctively, shielding her with his body in the cramped tunnel. Not happening, he said. The hunter struck. Evan kicked off the floor, slamming his shoulder into Kaelis and forcing them both sideways as the spears sliced through the space they had just occupied. Sparks shot like fireworks. As the weapon scraped the tunnel wall, the confined area worked against the hunter, its armor too bulky, its movements too restricted. Evan grabbed a loose conduit panel and rammed it into the hunter's exposed knee joint. The armor sparked. The hunter jerked sideways. Kaelis lifted her arm, summoning the last flicker of her strength. A small pulse of bioluminescent energy shot from her palm, striking the hunter's visor and blinding it long enough for Evan to shove them both past the staggering threat. Go! Evan yelled. They crawled forward as the hunter roared behind them, its spear jabbing wildly, scraping the walls. A second hunter dropped into the rear of the tunnel, cutting off their retreat. The truss shook under their combined weight. Evan, Kaelis whispered, her voice tight with panic. The structural integrity. A deafening crack split the air. The entire spine lurched sideways. Panels ripped free. The world tilted violently as the ventilation truss snapped loose from its anchors. Evan wrapped both arms around Kaelis as the spine broke away entirely, plunging downward in a twisting freefall through the station's superstructure. Metal screamed. Sparks erupted. The hunters tumbled with them, grabbing at anything to anchor themselves. Evan tightened his grip, pulling Kaelis against him as they plummeted through a storm of debris. Hold on to me, he shouted. But Kaelis did not answer. She was staring at him, her eyes wide, glowing, terrified, because she knew exactly where the collapsing spine was taking them. Downward, through the broken levels, toward the heart of Vesper 6, toward the unstable plasma core. The broken ventilation spine plummeted through the superstructure of Vesper 6 like a dying serpent, metal shrieking against metal as it scraped along collapsing beams and dangling conduits. Evan wrapped both arms around Kaelis, twisting his body to shield her as they fell. Sparks burst around them like meteor showers. Wind whipped through the shattered tunnel, and the distant thunder of the plasma storm roared through every fracture of the station. The spine slammed into a lower deck grid with an explosive jolt, bouncing violently before crashing sideways and skidding along a tilted maintenance catwalk. Evan's shoulder smashed against a support beam. Pain shot down his arm, but he held Kaelis tighter, refusing to loosen his grip even an inch. They slid to a grinding halt, tangled in twisted metal and debris. Evan coughed, the air thick with dust and burning plastic. Kaelis stirred in his arms, her luminous veins flickering weakly. Evan, she whispered. Are you injured? Just bruised, he said, though his entire left side throbbed. Are you all right? Not fully, she breathed. But alive. A metallic thud echoed above them. Evan looked up through the torn spine. The hunters were descending, their armor glowing ominously against the shadowed wreckage. They survived the fall. Evan muttered. Of course they did, Kaelis said. Their armor is built for orbital insertion. A short drop through a station frame is nothing to them. Evan groaned. Fantastic. That makes this so much easier. Kaelis attempted to push herself upright, but her legs trembled violently, and she collapsed back into his arms with a stifled cry. Her nerves were degrading again. The fall had shocked her system, and he could see the pulse along her thigh veins stuttering. She would not be able to move on her own for long. Evan slid his hand gently to her knee. Tell me what you need. She hesitated. The nexus. You must press it again. Harder this time. To reset the conduction pathway. Evan swallowed. Behind your thigh again? She nodded, cheeks flushed with strain. Yes, but be careful. The reaction will be stronger. We do not have time to be careful, Evan said. Hunters incoming. He pressed his palm against the glowing cluster behind her thigh. Her reaction was immediate. Her back arched sharply, her breath catching, her entire body trembling in a wave that rippled through her like electricity searching for ground. Her hand flew to his wrist, gripping it with surprising force. Evan, she gasped, barely able to speak. The instinct, I know, he whispered. Stay with me. The glow in her veins intensified, stabilizing into a steady rhythmic pulse. Her breathing evened out. The tremors faded. She sagged against him, drained but conscious. It is enough, she whispered. I can move again. Not well, but better than before. Good, Evan said. Because we need to get out of here before. A spear slammed into the metal beside his head, sparks erupting inches from his cheek. Evan jerked backward, dragging Kaelis with him. One of the hunters dropped into the wreckage, landing in a crouch that sent shockwaves through the fractured deck. Its visor glowed like a predatory eye, locking onto Kaelis instantly. Target reacquired, the hunter said. Warrior Kaelis Shira is to be reclaimed. Over my dead body, Evan muttered. The hunter turned its weapon toward him. That can be arranged. Evan grabbed a loose conduit and swung it like a bat. The electrified spear caught the metal mid-swing, sending a jolt up his arm that nearly knocked him off his feet. Kaelis lurched forward, grabbing his sleeve, pulling him behind a collapsed beam as the hunter struck again. Evan, she whispered urgently. Listen to me. If you keep fighting them like this, you will die. I cannot let that happen. Well, I am not exactly trying to die, Evan shot back. Then you must know the truth. She looked him directly in the eyes, even as the hunter climbed over debris toward them. I am not just a warrior. I am a direct blood Astrai, heir to the Shira lineage. Evan blinked. Meaning what? Meaning, she said, voice trembling with something deeper than fear, that the bond you invoked is not with a common soldier. The hunter raised its spear for a killing strike. Kaelis grabbed Evan's hand and pressed it firmly to the glowing nexus behind her thigh. Her whole body shuddered as the flares surged through her veins. You invoked a royal bond, she whispered. The hunter froze mid-strike. Its visor flickered. Its weapon hummed uncertainly. Royal designation detected, it said. Bond interaction confirmed. Evan swallowed. Is that good? Kaelis's fingers tightened on his wrist. It means, she whispered, you just became something impossible. The hunter stepped back. For the first time since the chase began, it hesitated. Human, it said slowly. You have bonded with Astrai royalty. Evan's heart pounded. Kaelis leaned against him, her breath hot against his neck. The hunter's voice lowered into something like reverence. By our laws, we cannot kill you. Evan let out a shaky laugh. Well, that is new, Kaelis whispered. But it also means they cannot let us escape. The hunter leveled its spear at both of them. By royal protocol, you must be taken alive. Evan tightened his grip around her. Then they will have to take us. Sparks surged around the hunter's weapon. The second hunter crashed through the wreckage above. The third appeared in the shadows behind them. And Evan knew part 9 was coming, where choices could no longer be undone. The wreckage around Evan trembled as all 3 hunters closed in, their spears pulsing with energy that cast long, eerie shadows across the shattered deck. The plasma storm outside howled through the cracks of the station, shaking the metal framework like an angry beast trying to tear the place apart. Evan tightened his arms around Kaelis, pulling her close as the hunters fanned out, blocking every possible escape. Kaelis's breath warmed his neck, unsteady, her bioluminescent veins glowing with a soft pulse that matched the rapid thudding of his heart. Her legs trembled, threatening to collapse again, but her gaze lifted with defiance. Evan, she whispered, if they take us alive, they will force the bond to completion. You will lose your freedom. I was not exactly using it, he whispered back. The lead hunter stepped forward, spear raised. By the law of the Astrai, a royal bond may not be severed by death. You cannot be terminated. You must be detained. Surrender peacefully. Evan looked at Kaelis. She looked at him, and for a moment, the world around them fell away, replaced by the quiet understanding in her eyes. He had not meant to start any bond, any ritual, any destiny. But he had jumped after her without thinking, held her without hesitation, carried her through storms and metal and falling debris. They had chosen each other long before they understood what it meant. Evan rose slowly, pulling Kaelis up with him. Her legs buckled, but he supported her weight. The hunters aimed their weapons again. Kaelis leaned on him, her voice steady despite her trembling. There is one thing they fear, she whispered softly. Only one thing the council cannot override. Evan raised an eyebrow. Now would be an excellent time to share that. She reached for his hand, interlacing her fingers with his. Her touch sent a wave of warmth through the bond connection, stronger, clearer than ever before. If the bond is declared willingly, she said, if it is spoken aloud by both, it becomes sacred law. Not even the hunters can break it. They cannot take us. They cannot separate us. They must protect us. Evan stared at her. Are you saying we have to declare it? She nodded. Or we die here. The hunters moved in, spears humming with lethal energy. There was no time to hesitate. Evan took her other hand. Tell me what to say. Her fingers squeezed his. Repeat after me. The hunters raised their weapons. Kaelis lifted her chin and whispered, in a trembling voice, by the light of the Astrai, I choose this bond. Evan swallowed and repeated, by the light of the Astrai, I choose this bond. Her eyes glowed brighter. By the breath of fate, I stand with this life. Evan answered, by the breath of fate, I stand with this life. A hum vibrated through the air, soft at first, then building. Her glowing veins spread light through the floor beneath them. And by the oath of my heart, she whispered, I claim protection and give it in return. Evan did not hesitate. And by the oath of my heart, I claim protection and give it in return. The moment the final word left his lips, a surge of bioluminescent energy erupted outward, flooding the wreckage with brilliant turquoise light. The hunters froze. Their visors flickered. Their armor systems locked. The lead hunter dropped to one knee. Royal bond confirmed, he said. Protocol shift engaged. The other two mirrored the motion, lowering their weapons. We cannot harm the bonded pair, the lead continued. We must escort and protect. Evan let out a breath he did not know he had been holding. Kaelis sagged into his arms, tears glimmering faintly in her glowing eyes. You saved us, she whispered. No, Evan said softly, brushing her cheek with his thumb. We saved each other. The hunters stepped back, creating a protective formation around them as the plasma storm outside finally began to fade. The fractured deck creaked, but held. And in the soft fading glow of Kaelis' veins, Evan realized something he had never expected to feel in a collapsing station, surrounded by aliens sworn to kill him only minutes before. Peace. Kaelis rested her forehead against his. Evan Rourke, she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion, you fell into my life. And now, I do not want to imagine it without you. He smiled, holding her close as the storm's winds quieted to a distant whisper. Then you do not have to. And in the settling silence, amidst glowing wreckage and kneeling hunters, their bond echoed through the broken station, soft, steady, unbreakable.